The summer of 3302 was marked by optimism and excitement following the discovery of Jacques Station marooned in a distant nebula. As a nascent colony sprang up around it, the dreams of early settlers began to coalesce into a new outpost of humanity. 2 years on, we revisit the story of the New Bubble. The Colonia region is humanity's budding frontier. A tiny speck of the Milky Way galaxy, it's cradled between the festival grounds and the western neutron fields and is today home to more than 71 systems inhabited by over 9 million people. The Colonia system is about 22,000 light-years from Sol and boasts the famous Jacques Station currently in orbit around Colonia 4. To get there, pilots must travel the extraordinary distance of the Colonia Highway, an investment of time that puts off all but the most determined. But once they arrive, visitors find a thriving region offering pristine mining fields, lucrative trade routes, unique possibilities for exploration, and the opportunity to become a true pioneer. Colonia became an important point of interest on the galactic map soon after the rediscovery of Jacques Station, following its misjump to Beagle Point on May 19, 3302. Commander Jacques and his starpoint went missing for nearly a month after the initial jump, and most of the inhabitants of the Facetious system feared the worst. Fortunately, a savvy explorer by the name of Commander Sly tracked down the crippled starport in mid-June of that year, and the word of the discovery spread quickly through populated space. In a little over a month, the exploration community organised a rescue operation, with pilots shipping tons of meta-alloys across the galaxy to the damaged starport. That mission seamlessly transitioned into what would become known as the August Exodus Jaunt to Jacques expedition. This expedition became the second largest independent commander-supported event in recorded history, just behind the original Distant Worlds expedition. Close to 600 Pilots Federation ships joined the efforts and raced their way out to Eoprol RST D394 in the effort to repair Jacques Station and establish the beginnings of a new and distant human colony. The Colonia Citizens Network, or CCN, quickly followed, founded by a few explorers including Aramis Kamzel, Unrealization, Cohen Leth and Sverin, now chief editor of this magazine. This organisation offered a communications hub for use by the colonists in forming their own society. From this initiative, it grew into a central core of activity for the colony, seeing close to 2,000 settlers join the network and commit to migrating into that region during the months that followed. Sverin explains what Colonia was like at the time.
The hope that many people had was that Colonia could become a different sort of place to the bubble. The atmosphere out there was incredible, everyone collaborating to build the new society. Everyone flew out in the open, hailing each other cheerfully, without fear of being caught in the crossfire of some war or picked upon by some murderous bully. We thought it would always be like that.
In December of 3302, the Colonia Council had created colonisation plans for the Colonia region, instigating the Colonia Expansion Initiative, or CEI. This was a series of monthly community goals, which later became known as the Colonia Migration Appeals, designed to allow Pilots Federation groups in the bubble to set up a base of operations in Colonia. In a matter of days, the galactic community began gathering resources in competitions designed to determine which organisations had the most to offer the colonisation effort. The top 10 contributing groups to the first Colonia Migration Appeal were awarded migration visas and permitted to help colonise pre-selected systems. This migration had a dramatic impact.
It changed the way Colonia felt. Most people didn't want factions moving out there, exporting their wars and politics from the bubble. The whole point of Colonia was that it didn't have those things.
Sverin left CCN and Colonia shortly after the CEI began. Following 5 successive Colonia migration appeals, each granting invitations into Colonia for a number of additional organisations, the CEI was formally shut down in May of 3303. The Pilots Federation groups with offshoots in the regions now began to learn to live alongside one another. The Jacques Accords were created, following protracted negotiations between the new factions. The CCN began to be perceived as an overtly political organisation by some, seeking to cling on to a first mover's advantage in the region that many of the new groups felt was no longer relevant. Commander Hags a CCN leader, explains.
The early days of Colonia were tough. The lack of outfitting and facilities was particularly grueling, but there was a sense of optimism, community and excitement that has since dwindled. Seeing new people all the time was simply wonderful. Civilization has meant, though, that it's all but gone now, as the mistrust burgeons between factions.
1 year later, and humans were racing out to the Colonia region once again. But instead of welcoming and hosting groups of self-sufficient immigrants on their way to new settlements, the outposts were now receiving an influx of refugees, fleeing the ongoing conflict with the Thargoids in and around the Pleiades Nebula. Fearing for their safety, entire families were taking what they could and leaving their homes in the bubble to attempt the long and dangerous journey to Colonia. In light of this, the Colonia Council decided to initiate a large multi-station construction campaign. Bids were accepted for delivery of construction materials to Pilkington Orbital in Einherjar, and the appeal was supported by commanders from every corner of the bubble. Within weeks, specifications for new outposts were provided to architects in the Colonia region. As construction began, refugees continued to arrive in Colonia. Gallant News quoted an unidentified source claiming several leaders within the Federation and Empire were angry with CCN leadership for claiming that the new expanse was a safe haven from Thargoid aggression. In addition, scientists with Cannon Research scoffed at the idea of creating a safe haven from alien lifeforms and pointed to the Pleiades Nebula as their proof. The controversy did not stop any migrants or refugees from continuing to pour into Colonia, which forced the Council to call for additional infrastructure initiatives in an effort to accommodate them. For millions of people, the safest idea was to get as far away from the Thargoids as possible, and the Colonia region was the logical answer to that most urgent and immediate threat. Sadly, as more refugees arrived in the nebula, criminal organisations also began to blossom. Piracy ran rampant as privateers and seekers of fortune took advantage of underarmed cargo and transport ships piloted by new immigrants. CCN sent word of the carnage back to the Pilots Federation, pleading for assistance. Within days, bounty hunters were sprinting across the 22,000 light years to the Carcosa system armed with high-powered weapons and the skill to use them. To the surprise of no one, the largest of many felonious groups was completely dismantled in less than a week. Order was once again restored to the fragile region. Once law and order were enforced in the area, scientists had the chance to begin their work. During May of 3304, Professor Alexei de la Vega launched a research project to determine if the region could support larger populations in the future. Upon receiving resources from independent local pilots, de la Vega's team seemed hopeful that expanding the Colonia region was possible. The following June, de la Vega launched a new initiative in the TIR system in partnership with TIR Technology Services to construct a scientific installation. With new data at their disposal, his team determined that the region's population was growing at an alarming rate, much faster than resources could be extracted and made available for them. The new installation began focusing on monitoring the overall infrastructure, tracking the progress in terraforming systems, and developing logistics plans to help manage the region's supplies and avoid critical shortages. August of this very busy year also saw Professor Diana Van Cleef, a scientific advisor to the Colonia system, announcing plans to construct a new hydroponics facility in the Ragnid system following research projecting food shortages in the near to mid-future. Once finished, the project, led by the Colonia Research Division, plans to provide natural and bioengineered foodstuffs for the populace of the nebula. The facility will also house a dedicated research laboratory for biotech science teams developing new crops. When Councillor Giselle Kingspear of the Colonia Council announced that 4 talented engineers had established bases providing their services in the nebula, her popularity may have skyrocketed.
The Council believes it has a duty to support those who contribute so much to the region's stability. That's why we have consulted with engineers in the core systems to identify individuals who could offer similar services here in Colonia.
The 4 engineers all have a variety of skills which should improve as they practice their vocations. Mel Brandon, based in Luktain, specialises in laser-based armaments, shields, engines and frameshift drives. Etienne Dawn works from the Lost system and is an expert on sensors, scanners and high-energy weapons. Petra Olmanova is based in the Asura system and develops ship armour, countermeasures and explosive weaponry. Lastly, Marsha Hicks in the Tier system offers upgrades in ballistic weapons, fuel scoops, refineries and limpets. Today, next to the bubble itself, the Colonia region is one of the most thoroughly explored areas of the galaxy. Being situated within a dense star field, it is overflowing with resources and beautiful sights, including a multitude of pristine ringed planets and minor stars. Commander Helium-7 explains.
As an explorer, I need to visit unexplored systems. So, in the Colonia region, I don't have to jump 1,000 light years to find uncharted space. In the Colonia region, it's all around you.
The large number of visible nebulae nearby make the region even more fascinating when we consider the possibilities of barnacles and other alien life which have been found near the Pleiades and the California Nebula. Since there is so much left to explore, who is to say what new or long-dead alien civilizations may yet be discovered in or near the region? It is ironic that Jacques' misfortune was the stimulus for the creation of the most successful settlement outside the bubble there has ever been.